This is for class 10. Today I am going to deal with nutrition in human being. This is from life processes. So see how our body is made up of and how food is digested and how energy is produced, who carries the food and how the waste products are removed. These are the factors. So the first digestion starts from our mouth. The fluid-like substance present in our mouth is the saliva, and it is secreted from the salivary gland. The saliva contains an enzyme, salivary amylase, and this breaks down complex starch molecules into simple sugar molecules. Now, the food moves through the food pipe, and the muscles, when the food moves through the food canal, the muscles of the food canal, there is a rhythmic motion that the muscles contract rhythmically. It contracts rhythmically. That means contraction and repulsion. It contracts rhythmically so that the food particles can move from the food pipe to the stomach. And the one food reaches the stomach, the inner lining of the stomach contains gastric glands which secretes gastric juice, and this gastric juice contains HCl and an enzyme trypsin, pepsin and mucus. The enzyme pepsin, it acts on proteins, and HCl, since the enzyme pepsin, it requires an acidic medium which is provided by the HCl, and the mucus, it protects the inner lining of the stomach because the stomach is in acidic medium. So the mucus, it prevents the inner lining of the stomach. Now from the stomach it moves to the small intestine. Now see how it has been designed. The food now moves in small quantities, and this is controlled by muscles which is called as this movement uh, is controlled by muscles, and that muscles is sphincter's muscles, that is the sphincter's muscles, which lets the food from the stomach to move into the intestine in small amount. Now when it moves into the intestine, the bile juice is secreted from the liver, and pancreas, it secretes digestive enzymes like trypsin and lipase. So these pancreatic enzymes, this enzyme secreted by the pancreas, it needs a alkaline medium. So the bile, it converts this acidic medium which is coming from the stomach into an alkaline medium, and at the same time the bile juice, it breaks the fat globules into larger fat globules into smaller fat globules, and the trypsin, which is enzyme secreted from the pancreas, it acts on proteins, and lipase, it acts on fat. Now the final digestion, it takes place in small intestine, that is protein is converted into amino acid, carbohydrate to sugar, and fats to fatty acid. It is converted to fatty acid. This is the final stage, fatty acid and glycerol. Now, the digested food, it has to move, that is absorption takes place. The inner walls of the small intestines has finger-like projections, which is called as villi, and number of blood capillaries is there. That means the villi increases the surface area of absorption. Now the blood carries the digested food, and the undigested food, it moves through the large intestine and it is removed through anus. Now the blood is carrying the food, the digested food. So from this digested food, we get energy. So where does this takes place? That means the respiration process. These six molecules of uh, 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 six molecules, six carbon molecules, glucose, that is the breakdown of glucose takes place. That is six molecules of glucose is converted into three molecules of carbon, which is called as pyruvate, and it takes place in the cytoplasm. Now, in the mitochondria, in the presence of excess oxygen, it is converted into three molecules of carbon dioxide, water, and energy. Now, this energy produces ATP molecules, which is required, which is a fuel, which is required for other cellular activities. Now, oxygen. So, who will carry the oxygen? The question. The oxygen, it comes through our nostril, through the throat to the lungs, and lungs is divided into number of tubes, and at each end of the tube it is a balloon like structure which is called as alveoli, and it provides the surface for the exchange of gases. That means removal of the carbon dioxide and intake of the oxygen. Now after this oxygen, it is carried by the blood. The RBCs, that is the red blood corpuscles, it contains hemoglobin, and hemoglobin has a great affinity for oxygen. So this hemoglobin carries the oxygen and reaches to the cell. At the same time, the blood, the absorbed food, that is the food which has been converted into simpler molecules, is reaches to the cell, and in the mitochondria, that is pyruvate, it, in the presence of oxygen, it is converted into three molecules of carbon dioxide, water, and energy. And this energy uh, forms the ATP molecules, which act as, which is a fuel for other cellular activities. Now the question arises: the flow of the blood. Who will do the flow of the blood? At the same time, the blood, the liquid part, which is called as plasma, it transports food, carbon dioxide, and waste materials in the absorbed form. Now, who will now how the blood will flow? The question arises: how will the blood will flow? This flow of the blood, that means we require a pump. So this is done by our heart. So we heard the oxygenated blood from the lungs, it enters into left atrium. From the left atrium, it moves to the left ventricle, and from the left ventricle, it moves to the all part. Blood moves to the. It is pumped out to the all parts of the body, and the deoxygenated blood, that is carbon dioxide rich blood. This carbon dioxide rich blood, it comes in the dissolved form and it enters the right atrium, and from the right atrium it moves to the right ventricle, and from the right ventricle it is pumped to the lungs where the exchange of gases takes place. So here you see that the plasma, it transports the food, carbon dioxide and waste material. But the oxygen is transported by RBCs because of the presence of hemoglobin, and the hemoglobin has a great affinity for oxygen. So in this way, oxygen reaches to the every parts of the body. That means to every cells. We can say to every cells. Here, your respiration is complete, means your energy is produced. Again, the pump required to flow the blood, this also is complete. After that, we move for the, and in the same time, I want to tell you, the arteries, it carries the oxygenated blood to the every part of the body, and the veins, it carries the dissolved carbon dioxide. Now the waste product form is the, now here comes our, we have to remove the waste product which is formed in the respiration, and this waste product will also be transported by the blood. So here the carbon dioxide in the form of dissolved, in the dissolved form, it is transported to the heart, to the right atrium, and from there to the lungs, and to the alveoli, for where the exchange of gases takes place. In this way the carbon dioxide is removed, but the nitrogenous waste such as uric acids, how this, how can we remove this? So here comes the process, excretion process, which is done by the kidney. So kidney, it has also tubes, and the tubes ends in a cup-like shape which is called as Bowman's capsule, where the filtration takes place and the filtrate is removed. The urine, the kidney, it contains a number of filtration units called nephron. So here the nitrogenous waste is removed, that is the urine. Nitrogen waste is removed. And now this nitrogenous waste, it moves to the urinary bladder through the urethra, to the ureter. Through ureter, it moves to the urinary bladder, and from the urinary bladder, it is released by the urethra. So this is how our functions takes place. This is how our body is designed. There are many other topics in this chapter, but I have taken only the nutrition in human beings, because in respiration it has been given, because in our body it takes place aerobic respiration, because the pyruvate is broken down in the presence of excess of oxygen. What will happen if there is lack of oxygen? There is, it is given in your book. Just that in yeast it takes anaerobic respiration, because of that ethanol is produced. And if we undergo heavy muscular exercise, due to the lack of oxygen, lactic acid is produced, therefore it brings cramps in our muscles. I have not discussed about it. I have only taken the nutritional part, that means how, from where the digestion starts, and how the food is, where the food is, that is main is carbohydrate, proteins and fat, what type of enzymes are required to break them into simpler molecular forms, and where does the absorption of this takes place, and who carries this food, That is the blood, that is the plasma, the liquid part. And the blood, and for the rest, for the to produce energy, that to produce energy, the breakdown of pyruvate, we require oxygen. From where does we get the oxygen? We get the oxygen from the nostril. And who carries it? The blood. But particularly the RBCs, because it contains hemoglobin, and hemoglobin has a great affinity for this oxygen. And the food and the waste products in the dissolved form, it is carried by the plasma. Now, for the flow of the blood, we require a pump, and that is done by the heart. That means the oxygenated blood from the lungs, it enters into the left atrium. From the left atrium, it moves to the left ventricle, and from this left ventricle, it is pumped to the to different parts of the body. At the same time, the blood is carrying the deoxygenated blood, that means the carbon dioxide rich blood. And this carbon dioxide rich blood, it enters the right atrium, from the right atrium to right ventricle, and from there it is pumped to the lungs, where to the from the lungs, that is the alveoli, where the exchange of gases takes place. Now this, the waste materials, that is carbon dioxide, it is carried by the blood. The waste materials like nitrogenous waste materials, how we will have to remove it. So here comes the kidney. It is also tubes where it ends with a cup-like shape, that is the Bowman's capsule, and where the filtration takes place, that is the filtrates moves out. And the kidney, it contains a number of filtration units which are called as neurons. And this nitrogenous waste, it moves from the kidney through the ureter to the urinary bladder, and from the urinary bladder it is released through urethra. And the undigested food, it moves to the large intestine, and from large through anus it is removed. So this is the cycle which takes place in our body. So I have taken only the nutritional part of the of human beings. Thank you.